If you feel like you are barely hanging on to your family by a thread, like your life is crumbling in your hands, don't give up. You're here right now listening to this episode for a reason. Stay with me.
Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge, a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability and culture of their family's environment. Now, here's your host, Jonathan Guerrero.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. My guest is TEDx speaker Tommy Maloney. Tommy is the founder of Blending the Family and an author of many books, including his newest one, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. He's also a coach for dads who are struggling through divorce and parenting. Tommy, thank you so much for being on the Fatherhood Challenge.
I am pumped to be on your program. So thank you. I am honored, Jonathan, to be on this show.
Tommy, you are the founder of Blending the Family. There must be a story behind why you started it. What is your story?
I have no story. So we can move on to the next question. No, I'm kidding. So we have a blended family. So it's my wife, and then we have 3 kids between us. My wife has 2 daughters. I have a son. We are in the blended family space. So think of it this way, Jonathan. Think of, for those out there that remember the great show, The Brady Bunch, we're very similar to that, except number 1, we only have 3 kids. Number 2, we have no Alice. We can't afford Alice. And number 3, our dog's name is Otis and not Tiger. So to get into the origins of blending the family, my wife and I, when I say we, my wife and I, when we started dating, we wanted to create a positive atmosphere for all the kids. And we didn't see any books on it. There was really nothing out there, Jonathan, to help create a positive, successful, blended family. And so that's how it all started, was originally with my wife and I putting together a podcast, which is still going strong, and just with her psychology background, helping other families. And that's how it all started.
You've been outspoken about your faith before. What role has your faith played in your story?
Oh, wow. Great question. So as far as my faith probably didn't really come around until the past, I would say 10 years. And I say 10 years because that's how long my wife and I have been married. Prior to that, Jonathan, I went to Catholic school back in the burbs of Chicago. Go Cubs, go Blackhawks. And so, I went to a Catholic school. Every day there was mass, every day there was praying, every day, you're trying to, hear the word. And I just wasn't there. I wasn't really into it at that time. And it wasn't until I met my wife and I started dating my wife. And one of the very first events that I attended at her church was right around Christmas time. And they had the big production of Christmas lights, and you had a play and you had a message. And, I really enjoyed that, but I still wasn't ready. And so it wasn't until there was a change at the church, there was a change in leadership. And with the new leadership, I felt that I was starting to understand it. I was starting to feel a presence. And it wasn't really, Jonathan, until I went to a men's retreat at the church. And I felt that I was, walking into a Mensa meeting going, I'm in the wrong place. And it wasn't until I started sitting, talking to other dads, other men, and talking about faith. And I would say, I don't get it. And they're like, guess what? We don't get it either. But that's why we're here, to figure it out. And with that being said, I enjoy my time of meditation. I enjoy my time of my aloneness of every once in a while. I'll just sit and actually just sit and pray for people, for things, so faith hasn't really come to me until, like I said, Jonathan, until this past 10 years of learning from my wife.
It sounds to me like you also learned a lot just from the fellowship with other men too, which we've talked about a lot on the program as being absolutely essential to the development and stability of every dad.
Well, I think part of it too is, and I mentioned it on my podcast, Blending the Family too, is that I want men to understand that it's not a weakness asking for help, going to therapy, having those one-on-one conversations with your significant other. It's a strength when you say to somebody, "I need help. I'm struggling," and I am very fortunate to have not only a partner in my wife, but I have a really strong circle of men that I can say to them, "Hey, can we just sit and chat?" For me, Jonathan, it's because my day job involves a lot of travel, and it involves a lot of being in hotels alone and sitting in rental cars alone and flying, all those things. I tend to fall into a little bit of a trap of what I call my depression. I label it as fog. So from time to time, the, f- the fog comes in, and this is where I reach out to my network, or again, my wife, and say, "Hey, can we just talk? Can we just, tell me something good, tell me something positive, things of that nature." So it's key for men to be able to have the comfort in themselves and the comfort within their fellowship, their friendship with other men, to just simply say, "Hey, can we just talk? I'm not feeling positive. I'm not feeling it today. Can we just have just some quality time?"
I can sometimes feel when I just need that time, that company with other dads, with even just other guys, to be able to share that wisdom, sometimes to be able to offload things. But it's also so critically important from what you're saying to have that quality time with your spouse, to just be vulnerable, to level with them about what's going on in your mind, what's going on in your heart, and just coordinate and plan things together. And I think that they appreciate that too.
Well, I'll give you a quick story, John, to touch on that. And that was recently I had a business trip that took me away from the home for 3 weeks. And during the second week, like I said, I could really feel my fog rolling in. And I was struggling. I was just struggling. And luckily, I recognized that. And so I did reach out to my wife and just say, "Hey, this this solitude is really getting to me. Can we just either FaceTime or talk tonight?" And so I again, not to keep repeating this, but it's in one of the things I want to build a legacy on is trying to help more men talk and get help for mental health. And I am, like I said, I am just so grateful for my wife. I am just super blessed to again have a partner. And you know you're talking about things that you need within your relationship, and so we try our best. And it's I mean, it's life. I mean, life happens, and we try, Jonathan, to schedule those, either a weekly or every couple weeks date nights, and it's not always the case. But if you can build a connection, if you can build, that relationship on trust and love and forgiveness, you have a solid ground building upon your relationship.
Absolutely. Tommy, you recently released a book called My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m. You also grew up in a broken home just like I did. How did this life experience inspire your book?
Oh, how much time do we have? Anyway, so the title of the book, My Dad's Advice at 5:04 a.m., comes from my son Connor being born at that time at 5:04 a.m. And as you know, as a parent yourself, Jonathan, you have to, once your children are born, you have to start making those phone calls to the relatives. And so the first person I called at the time was my former spouse's mom. I told her the great news, and I said, "We'll talk to you later." Then I called my mom, told her the news, told her to call her later. My former spouse's dad died tragically in a car accident. He was killed by a drunk driver, and so my former wife was really young when she lost her dad, and so the only other than my bonus dad, we have my dad. And my dad, um, before Connor was born, he did not want to be called grandpa. He didn't want to be called, that type of label, because in his mind, he was still that swinging single bachelor living in downtown Chicago, even though he lives with his girlfriend, has been living with her for eons. So it's really hard to get him to get out of his own way to say, no, you're his, blood grandfather. You need to understand this. And so when I called my dad to say that, hey, congratulations, you're a grandfather, even though he hated when I said that. But later on, he did change, and he's a fantastic, not only is he a fantastic grandfather to Connor, but he's a fantastic role model to my two bonus daughters. We went to visit Chicago several years ago, and he was our tour guide. So he's a fantastic role model when it comes to my guru of fatherhood at times. But when I said to my dad, "Hey, congratulations, you're a grandfather," there was this long pause, Jonathan, and he goes, "All right, do you know what your role is right now as a father to your son Connor?" So my dad had this dramatic pause when it came to this fatherly advice. And as I'm sleep deprived, as I'm thinking about this, Jonathan, I'm thinking about, all right, so he's asking me, what is my role as a father at this moment? And all I'm thinking is, I want a nap or lots of coffee. But to appease him, I go, it's just to love my son as best I can. And my dad said, no, your role is just like what I did for you. And that is to screw him up as best you can. And I'm like, great. Can I go now? So that's the advice. So after hearing this advice, my thought was, I'm just going to reverse engineer it. So how do I take this advice of screwing up your kid, but turning it the other way? And the way I thought of it was spending quality time, as much quality time as I could with my son. Little did I realize 5 years later, after he was born, that's when his mom and I ended up getting a divorce. So my advice within the advice, Jonathan, is don't take your time granted with your kids.
There's only so much time that you get with them. And in every bit of that time, it has to be absolutely quality time. And you may, at the moment, it may seem like, oh, this is not really that important. This is not that significant. But you only get that moment once.
Your kids are younger, correct?
Yes, they are younger. There's one is my oldest is 11 and my youngest is 9.
To use my son as an example, he's 19. And again, taking time for granted. So I thought when I got married the first time, death do us part, all that stuff. And when we did get divorced, I had to figure out, well, how do I stay connected with my son when I'm not in that house? And so, there are things when he was first learning how to read, and wherever I was on the road, I'd send him postcards, or we would try and do video chats way before FaceTime. And so it was just little things like that to help stay connected with him. Moving forward, my son has been the past year living out in California, trying to live his hockey dream. And at the end of this month, uh, I'm going to fly out to California, and then he and I are going to take the road trip from California back here to Colorado. So I am super excited about that because I was a stay-at-home dad back when he was first born. We really built. I feel the jury's still out; it's up to him. But I feel that we built a really good relationship, and so because we built that foundation of me being a stay-at-home dad, and now, you know, essentially 14, 15 years later, we're going to now take this road trip. I'm excited because he's an adult. We can have some really open conversations. And he's stuck in a car, so he's not going anywhere. So that's why I'm excited about this, Jonathan, is to have these conversations, to have, I want to know. I want to know how I'm doing as a dad and how I can improve. I mean, our kids are the experts on that, and so if there's anything I can do to change, if there's anything that I need to be better at, this is going to be that opportunity, because you don't get those opportunities a lot. Again, don't take your time for granted with your kids.
Let's change gears a little bit and let's talk about the divorce rate. What is going on with the divorce rate? Are we really seeing more divorces now than we did, let's say, 20 or even 50 years ago? Or is it just that we're becoming better and wiser about how to handle them?
It's a tough question, because no matter what numbers you look at, I think on average, it's still, for the first divorce, it's about 51 to 53%. It's even higher for the second divorce, which is in the 60s, I believe. And then if you get divorced a third time, it's in the mid 70s. And it's been a while since I've looked at those numbers, but that's usually the average. And I think part of the problem is, and this, again, this is just my opinion here, Jonathan, is that it is so easy to get a divorce. It is just, here in the state of Colorado, you can file, and then by 90 days, you are officially divorced. So it is just too easy. And I don't know. I think part of the issue is we're not seeking out help. We're not going to the professionals, the mediators, the counselors, the psychiatrists, to say, where are the areas we can help within our marriage and build upon that. When my wife and I, before we got married, my wife said to me, my current wife, "Hey, would you be willing to go to marriage counseling before we get married?" And I said, "Yeah. I mean, I've been in therapy since a young lad, and so I am all for it. I'm all for to building, a healthy marriage by going to counseling, getting, you know, you know, having those open conversations, because you don't want to go into a marriage thinking, if this doesn't work out, I can just get divorced, instead of fighting for your marriage, instead of working for your marriage, working for your family." And so that's what I feel, Jonathan, that it's too easy to get a divorce these days.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I think the other part of it is the other component should be a normalizing of getting help. And I love the fact that you were proactive on getting the counseling. There was this time where there was a stigma around having a therapist. It's you get in a conversation. It's the water cooler conversation. Oh, you see, are you seeing a shrink? What's up? What's going on here? Like it's a super bad thing. And we're slowly moving to where this is now a very normal thing where more people are seeing therapists and this is normal. It's even tougher for us guys because we have this, for whatever reason it is, we have this problem with saying, I need help. And with it being normal for us to actually admit that and to go seek out help. But I mean, I kind of look at it this way. It's like, would you rather get the help and be better off, or would you rather have the train wreck? I think it just comes down to those two things, especially when help is so readily available now than it ever used to be.
Yeah, and I go back to the earlier conversation we're having about, you know, not to stereotype it, but I still feel that, you know, a lot of the men are fixated on the 1950s, where number one, if your child is crying, I'll give you something to cry about. Go rub some dirt on it,
Exactly.
and not, again, and not admitting that they need help, or can just openly say, "Hey, I need to go see a psychiatrist. So there's something going on internally. I just need to go." Um, and I think that we're getting better as a whole for men. I think um, we're getting to a new generation, a new level of getting that mental help that we need. And so we're not totally there yet, but I think we're on an upswing.
What happens to kids emotionally when parents separate or divorce? What does it do to their world?
I can only speak for myself. When my parents got divorced, ironically, I too was about 5 years old. And to me, what it did was it wrecked me. Looking back, and I'm sure a lot of my emotional issues were stemmed from the divorce. I mean, I'll never forget. It's tattooed on my brain. The day that my dad left, I'll never forget that. So when I went through my divorce, that was one image I did not want my son to see, of his dad leaving. And so I firmly feel that if you can really use co-parenting to what it's for, and that is for the kids and keeping the kids first, and not having the two former spouses, number one, putting the kids in the middle, you know, using them as a pawn, um, you know, having healthy conversations between the former spouses, the kids will be resilient. The kids will bounce. I don't want to say bounce back, but they will find some normalcy. But it goes back to the adults, Jonathan. If the adults act like adults, it's in the benefit of the kids. But if they start acting like idiots, and he said, she said, and it's constant bickering back and forth, either via text, via email, via phone calls, it's not going to benefit the kids. So if you don't have the mindset of putting the kids first, you're going to end up literally screwing up those kids for life.
Tommy, what is the number one problem you see with the dads that you coach?
I see the number one problem of bouncing from one relationship to another without taking a stop and working on themselves. And so, after a divorce, they think, oh, I need to go find, somebody to replace, my former spouse. And that's what I see, Jonathan. I see more men not taking the initiative to, again, as we've been talking about, seeking help, figuring out what is it that they can work on, to improve not only themselves, but improve their relationship with other people, but most importantly, with their kids.
Wow. Yes. Taking that time of doing a self inventory, and that part takes a certain level of vulnerability, I would imagine, and is not necessarily a fun experience because it requires you to actually look at even and face some of the things going on inside of you that are wrong. You may end up running into traumas that may have been contributors to why things turned out they did, and then having to confront those things in your life can be a very painful process. But again, it comes back to getting that help, getting that therapy, getting the resources that you need to sort through that, so you don't bring that into whatever is next going on in your life, and so you don't project that onto your kids as well.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, you could have, your history is going to affect, moving forward. So if, for example, you were abused as a young child and you haven't dealt with that, that's going to carry forward on a daily basis. And so, again, that's where we men need to take a step back and go, all right, how can I improve myself before getting into the next relationship? Because chances are, it's like on the shampoo bottle, rinse and repeat. So you're going to end up in another possible bad relationship instead of, again, focusing on you. And that's what I tell the many men is you need to focus on you first before focusing on your kids. Because if your kids see that you're working on yourself and the kids see that you're getting healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, even spiritually, they're going to be that way as well.
How can dads find out more about you or get coaching and buy your book?
Just head to the website, blendingthefamily.com. That's blendingthefamily.com. Or you can always email me at tommy@blendingthefamily.com.
Just to make that a little bit easier too. So if you also go to thefatherhoodchallenge.com, and that's thefatherhoodchallenge.com, and you go to this episode, look below the description. All of the links that Tommy just mentioned are going to be right there. So you can click on it. It'll take you to the website. It will take you to the book, and it will take you right to where you can reach out and connect with Tommy directly. So as we close, what is your challenge to dads listening now?
Work on yourself.
Very, very, very simple.
That's it.
Work on yourself. So Tommy, thank you so much for coming on to the Fatherhood Challenge and sharing so much wisdom with us. It's been an honor to have you.
It's the other way around. It's my honor to be on your show, Jonathan. I am so happy we are connected. I am so happy that we took this opportunity to hopefully bring value to your tribe, your peeps, your audience.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatherhood Challenge. If you would like to contact us, listen to other episodes, find any resource mentioned in this program, or find out more information about the Fatherhood Challenge, please visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.